Hi there, today I wanted to talk to you about VTS, or Visual Thinking Strategies. This is an approach that was developed by Abigail Husson and Philip Yanawine. I'm not positive I'm saying those names correctly, but they developed this technique to use with children to help them develop their visual literacy skills. It's a way that you can look at or take a piece of art, look at it, and interpret it in their own way. You'll see throughout time, if you do this with kids, that their interpretations develop over time. They use more evidence to talk about why they see what they see, and it helps other kids really understand the way that other people think. It's really wonderful, it's deep and rich. It's worthwhile to use for any kind of study, honestly. I personally really like incorporating art pieces into any kind of humanities study because it gives us a richness to look at the topic at hand from such a variety of viewpoints. Art often allows us to look at a subject in many different ways, and so VTS is a way to allow us to access that art and gain more understanding and deeper understanding about any topic. So I personally use it for anything. I'd bring art into any topic of study to integrate it because it adds that richness and that depth. I wanted to give you an example of a VTS session that you might do. And so how it begins, it's very basic structure, and this can be found online. That's why I don't feel bad sharing it. I personally attended a workshop at the Eric Carle Museum of Arts in Massachusetts when I went to college there, not at the museum, but in Massachusetts. And there are trainings all over for this, but even on the website they explain the basic premise, and there are really great resources actually on this website, vtshome.org. They even have an image of the day, so that if you're not doing a certain unit of study, but you want to incorporate VTS as a part of your, say, warm-up to your lessons, which it's really great to do, you can find some great images online on this resource. So here's the basic outline of how you do VTS with your class or with your group of kids. You'll first give them all a copy of the art piece, or maybe you'll project it up. I always like to have individual copies. I had small groups, so I would make copies, definitely in color when possible, so that the kids could each have their own copy and study it. I put them in page protectors so that they can be used over and over. And so I chose this piece as a part of our study of Indigenous peoples. And so if this were the piece at hand, I would say first, after I gave it all out to them, let's study the picture quietly on your own for about 2 minutes, okay? Asking yourself the question, what is going on in this picture? What's happening here? Okay, and then I set a timer. Usually I have a visual timer or just a little beeper timer there so that they can see the time go by and know what they're doing. And they just study the picture. So here's the picture that we have. I'll give you a second to look at it. And you're asking yourself the question, what is going on here? What's going on here? What's happening in this picture? Okay, and then part of the norms of this kind of discussion is we raise our hands. Okay, so I'd like to just hear one voice at a time. So what's happening here once the time is up to study it on your own? And a child might say, well, I see what looks like teepees in the middle here, and they're pointing it out. And I have my copy, and I'm pointing out what they're showing as well, so that kids can follow along. And I repeat back what they saw. So you see teepees here. Okay, and then the next question is, the follow-up is, finding the evidence for why they see what they see. So what do you see that makes you say that these are teepees? And they might say, well, it has a triangular structure there, and it has some sticks coming out at the top. Okay, and I'll repeat that back, and I'll say, okay, so Johnny thinks that these are teepees because he sees a triangular structure with sticks coming out at the top. I don't add any interpretation, I don't correct, I don't add my own, I just repeat back what I heard, okay? And I make sure that that's what they meant, then yes it is, okay? And I might have a follow-up question to that, like, what do you see that makes you say those are sticks coming out at the top? Well, they're long and pointy. Okay, so he thinks these are sticks because they're long and pointy coming out. Okay? And then the next question, what more can we find? Okay, and that's an invitation for other people to speak. What more can we find in this picture? And notice I didn't say that was right or wrong or anything, right? This is art, so we're interpreting it. And we're finding evidence for why we see what we see, which is the brilliant part. Because if you think about it, the way that we are in the world is we're constantly interpreting what it is that we see. And so this practice gives us practice in giving the evidence for why it is that we're making those assumptions. Because we're making assumptions all the time. That's how it works. And so another kid might say, oh, I see what looks like people on the outside edge. Okay, and I'll say, okay, so Sarah sees people on the outside edge. What do you see that makes you say these are people? And then she might say, well, it looks like that's a body shape and then a head. And I'll say, okay, so you see a body shape and a head on the outside, which makes you think these are people. Okay, what more can we find? And we'll keep doing this. Oftentimes, now you'll notice I left the information here about the art piece. That's optional. Sometimes you'll find that it's distracting for a group of kids and that's all that they can focus on. If that's the case, I would leave this off. For my adolescents, they always use this as information to interpret the picture, which I found really valuable, honestly. So invariably, there will be a kid who will say, well, this is the governance meeting, and that's the name of this piece. And I'll say, okay, so you say, this is the governance meeting. What do you see that makes you say that? And they'll say, well, it says it right here. I'll say, okay, what more can we find, right? I really like adding this information. It helps them when they're studying the picture. Sometimes the pieces are extremely large or really small, or they're made out of a non-traditional material. And that's all information that can help us interpret this piece as well. So I prefer to leave it on, but again, it's up to you. So we would go through this for a set amount of time. I'll probably set a timer for maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15. Depends on sort of where their energy is and how much they're getting out of this activity. They can build up over time, certainly. But you can imagine the richness that comes from this, and having us all cite the evidence that we are seeing that allows us to make the stories that we make about what we see is so valuable. So that is an example of VTS and how I might use it in a classroom with kids of any age. Really can do this. And it's valuable to incorporate this in any discipline or use it as a warm-up activity just on its own. I prefer to incorporate it into the study at hand because it really does add richness to what it is that we are learning about, because art always helps us understand the world in a new way. And this particular strategy, visual thinking strategy, really does build such inquiry-based skills for the kids, and you'll see it. You'll really see it. All right, so that was VTS. Enjoy. Thank you.